What is happening out there, Roto Scouts basketball fans? Had to stop and make sure the mic was on there for a second. Hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to a Thursday show, following up a ridiculous Wednesday of basketball for which we didn't end up having a show yesterday. Just ended up was not going to be able to stay on top of that ludicrous nonsense that we called a 14-gamer yesterday. At no point was I completely on top of things. Like, every time I posted a change, that slate changed 19 times. Literally 19 times between, like, 4:30 and, like, 9 o'clock. Totally ridiculous. Unacceptable to have a slate like that. Nobody talked to you, Alexa. Thing pinged over there. I said unacceptable, and it thought I said Alexa. Weird. Couple people here hanging out. We'll a little slow start. We are actually early because this is a 5-game slate, but it doesn't start till 8 o'clock today. So in a way, we're ahead of the game. In a way, we're at the weird start time that I don't usually like starting at. We'll see if any news comes down at 4:30. Probably not. It's been kind of a slow news day. We've actually got a lot of the pieces for this little 5-gamer. I feel like it's deceptive. Like, all the Jazz big men are in on the second night of a back-to-back, not even listed on the injury report. I find that suspicious. My initial cut of projections, I had them all out. I was expecting the Jazz to be totally shorthanded tonight. And right now, anyway, Sexton and Clarkson are both out, but all the bigs are in. So that was a twist, but that's one that I think could unwind in like a 5:30 we get like downgraded to probable, 6:30 downgraded to questionable, and then they don't play. So I do think there are some wrinkles potentially coming. We have a lot of known knowns, though. This slate right now, they're at least telling us that this is kind of straightforward. So it's a really interesting one. It's our last day, 5 games before coming off of a 14-gamer, so basically all these teams on back-to-backs. Last day before the All-Star break. We're off tomorrow. No basketball tomorrow, no hockey tomorrow. And then basketball's out till Sunday for the All-Star games, the 3 All-Star game configuration thing that they have, and then you have dunk contests and stuff Saturday. And then not back till a 1-game slate on Wednesday with the Hornets and the Lakers. And that game's not till 10 p.m. Might do something fun that day. Maybe we'll do like a 9 o'clock Wednesday hangout. I'll have a couple beers with Charlie and then jump on and do a show. Maybe I'll have him guest star from like the other seat across the table here. Knows nothing about, not nothing about basketball, but not a basketball guy, not a DFS guy. So that'll be fun. But that 10 o'clock game is weird. Might not be a show that day, but there'll be projections. But the overall point, I think that, this last day, especially with some veterans and everything, this last day could get very, very wonky with guys getting a little bit of break. Even if they're listed as active, we could see guys play fewer minutes than we might normally. Could get a little funky. We also have a lot of low totals on this slate, oddly. Not a juicy slate when it comes to the Vegas board. Let me pull up the most recent. We'll get into it. Cujo, I hope you're having a good Thursday too, pal. I didn't say hi. Hello to everybody else out there. Only a handful of people here with us so far. It's okay. People will find us as we go. We'll just hang out. Golden State at Houston. 224.5 point total there. Houston favored by 1.5 at home. We've got a questionable Alperen Şengün. We've got Steven Adams wasn't going to play. Last night they had announced Tari Eason and Steven Adams were both going to play yesterday and then be off today. But Steven Adams not on the injury report, so I popped him back in there. That's another one. Keep an eye on it. He might end up not playing, and we just haven't heard about it yet. But right now, not even listed. Sacramento at New Orleans looks like a decent enough upside spot for that usual roulette wheel of just any one of the King starters could be quite good here. It's a 235-point total. That is 10 points higher than any other total on the slate. That's our best game target as far as a good team against a bad team, good players against mediocre players. The Pellies are without basically every NBA body they've got outside of Trey Murphy. And the total's the highest on the board. Sacramento's the second biggest favorite on the board. So I definitely think we can get to at least some of those guys. I don't know how much of a collection of, you don't probably want to line up with 4 Kings starters in it, but they're definitely going to come up at least decently. They're looking pretty okay. They do have a little bit of a wild card there. Apparently, Markelle Fultz bit my tongue while I was saying that. Apparently, Markelle Fultz is on the Kings now and available to make his debut. He's not available on either DFS slate. I don't have it projected right now. Like the other day, when Alex Len was available to debut for the Lakers yesterday, he wasn't on either slate. But, right, am I remembering that correctly? Or maybe he was on FanDuel, not DraftKings. I forget how it worked. Or that was Jahlil Okafor was on FanDuel, not DraftKings. Same deal. But the way I did it for Len was I just kind of carved the minutes out. Like I put him on my board, gave him minutes, took them away from the other centers. And then it turned out Jackson Hayes did end up getting the start, but Alex Len started the second half because Hayes got hurt, yada, yada. Point being, player not on the slate, you can't get him, but you still do potentially have to consider his impact. Right now, I haven't done that with Fultz because I don't know that it's necessarily actually going to take the court. And there's only, the way they run these rotations in Sacramento, there's only so many minutes to go around for the non-starters. So I haven't done anything with it yet, but just be aware that that's out there. OKC at Minnesota, probably the best overall game of the day in terms of the two teams, the two quality teams going at each other. But a 9-point spread in OKC's favor on the road in Mini, 225.5 point total. Still no Julius Randle for Mini. Got them configured right now, as we've seen recently, but Conley's questionable, so we'll see how that all works out. OKC side, usual suspects. I think SGA, Jalen from the top, and then we'll see what else. There's a little bit of an impact with Chet back. Chet's in the mid-20, I think 25 minutes. I think I gave him exactly what he's played. There's a little impact with him and Hartenstein back and forth. Miami at Dallas. Dallas without a lot of everybody again. 216.5 point total. It was pretty funny before the game yesterday. Jason Kidd basically said everybody's going to have a chance to play center tonight, and that's essentially true. But just a 1.5 spread in the Heat's favor on the road in Dallas. 216.5 point total. This is the low point of the slate. As far as the game total, as far as just the overall nature of the game, not a big fan of that spot. And then rounding things out at the end of the night, the Clippers visiting the Jazz, 9.5 point spread there, favoring the Clippers on the road. No Kawhi, missing a couple other pieces for the Clips. The Jazz, as mentioned, no Clarkson, no Sexton, but we do have, at least right now, the big men are supposed to be active. 227.5 point total. Looks pretty juicy. James Harden coming up pretty big in a lot of ways projection-wise. We got him a little bit less than the field, I think, is just taking a glance at Sims before the show. But definitely looking like a piece, and guards have found major success against the Jazz this year. So it could be a good Harden spot to end the night. And then I do still think we're going to see some values come through from the Jazz, even more than what we've got on the board right now. Talking about the ins and the outs, another handful of people showed up. Good to hear the day's going well, Cooch. Excellent. Rounding out the week, right? Thursday. It's another just kind of gray day. It warmed up here in Jersey. It's in like the 40s today, but it's still that like crunchy, icy snow hasn't really melted away yet. It's not a nice day. I don't know what we're getting in the next couple. It's funny though, the other day when I was talking about never knowing what the weather is going to be like, it started snowing. Like within 24 hours, there was a snowstorm. It's like, that I had no idea was coming. So anyway, let's get into the ins and the outs. So again, just the updates that came through during the day. Markelle Fultz apparently available to debut for the Kings. No idea what the minutes are going to look like there, but if anything, I think it would just be a handful of backup minutes in the 6 to 8 territory. I don't think he would be DFS relevant anyway, but potentially minor impact on the upside for some other guys. Minor. And then the Collins, Markkanen, and Kessler all not even being on the injury report was kind of a surprise. That was the changes from the first update or the first post that went up. Probables for tonight: Nikola Jovic, Duncan Robinson. Let me actually double check that nobody else ended up listed probable on that 430. Jovic, Robinson, probable, and yeah, nobody else. Questionables. Bam is questionable. Dante Exum, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, all questionable. Those are three guys, Kyrie and Clay most notably, that I do kind of have in mind when I was mentioning the night before the All-Star break. We could see guys either not play a full complement of minutes, especially on a back-to-back, or we might just see guys sit. So those three guys being listed as questionable, particularly, probably most specifically Clay, just being the most grizzled veteran of the three. But any two of those guys may not be out there, and all three might not be out there. Mike Conley, same kind of thing. Conley also has just been in and out of the lineup lately. If memory serves, didn't play yesterday or their most recent game. Anthony Edwards also questionable. Rudy Gobert also questionable. Same kind of impact. We could lose all three of those players. We know what it looks like without Conley. Ant being out obviously creates all kinds of havoc there. Gobert being out, we kind of know what it'll look like, but it'll also be somewhat hectic. And then Amir Coffey is questionable. Out, Jonathan Kuminga, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith Jr., Fred VanVleet, Cody Zeller, Devin Carter, Isaiah Crawford, Brandon Boston, Jamal Cain, Herb Jones, DeJounte Murray, Kelly Olynyk, Zion Williamson. There's all your Pellies. Kevin Love, Terry Rozier, Drew Smith, Andrew Wiggins all out for the Heat. That was a change from my first cut that I didn't even get to post of the projections. So no Andrew Wiggins and no Terry Rozier were the big impacts there. So some changes there for the Heat. Anthony Davis, Danny Gafford, Derek Lively, Caleb Martin, Dwight Powell, PJ Washington. There's all your missing Mavs so far. Alex Caruso, Usmani Deng, AJ Mitchell, Nikola Topic, who's been out all season, Cason Wallace, Dante DiVincenzo, Julius Randle continue to be out for Minnesota. Drew Eubanks, Kawhi Leonard, Jordan Clarkson, Elijah Harkless, Taylor Hendrick, KJ Martin, Colin Sexton, and Oscar Schwebwe are all out. Oh, Shannon's just at the top of the board because he didn't go through the sim. Look at the numbers. He just sorted up there. The first thing I'm going to do is just take him off the board because he doesn't matter. So yeah, don't be deceived by that. He came up at 0%. He's projected for 5 fantasy points in 8 minutes. He just didn't go through the DraftKings sim because I didn't catch his something must have been missing from when I put it in because of the junior that he carries on DraftKings. I thought I had corrected it. But he didn't go through. But either way, yeah, I disagree too, and he does not go there. I'm just taking him off the board. He's still in projections, don't get me wrong. He's just off the board for show purposes. So, yeah, that was not a ranking. That was just a sorting deal. What did he even do? What did he do last night? Oh, wow. 31 fantasy points in 20 minutes, huh? See, I didn't even notice that. Yeah, he's just not getting those minutes. And he's not on the board. I am King Subscribe, says great show, boss. I like that name. That's a good point, yeah. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Subscribe over at rotoscouts.com if you're looking for projections for all the major sports. Every NBA main slate, every NHL main slate. Football when it's in season, baseball right around the corner. Access to all of it, not a per sport thing. Under $1 a day for all of it. Gonna have some season-long content going up over the next week or so during the All-Star breaks. Trying to monetize that spot for you guys, keep it valuable so that you're not paying for getting nothing because there's nothing going on. Gonna try and throw together some Daytona projections. That's on Sunday. What else is going on? Is there like a volleyball tournament? We have an active esports channel in the Discord, by the way, if anybody's into the esports thing. I don't have projections or anything for it, but there's some pretty sharp people on it. I see those guys talking to each other and posting wins a lot. That's a link to the just Discord in general. But if you're into esports, hop in there too, because there's a good channel in there. At some point, I'll get one of those guys to start projecting it and get that up on the site too. But anyway, let's dig into this thing. So yeah, ignoring Terrence Shannon off there unless something changes. Going by our DK ranks as usual, because we got the same slate on both sites. Pretty different slate across sites, I'll say that much. Like, we're getting a pretty solid chunk more just in the raw sense of Trey Murphy on FanDuel at 8,300 versus the 82 that he costs on DraftKings. Not that this isn't a great spot, but it's just getting occupied by other pieces, it seems, on DraftKings a little bit more, where it's just wide open, green fields for Trey Murphy on FanDuel. We're well ahead of the field on FanDuel. Love that spot. Everybody out. Definitely makes sense to me. Yeah, Power, I just don't have the bandwidth to do college basketball. I wish I did. Those slates just get out of hand. It's just too much to cover. I couldn't do it to the point where I would feel good about it and like putting it up, Maybe next year, planning ahead for this for this time frame, maybe we'll do something. But yeah, not the approach. But yeah, that'll be in season for sure. I'm just kind of looking forward to a nice, quiet couple of days over the weekend. I can get on top of things for baseball, start generating that season-long content like I've been talking about, just non-frantic. I'll put projections for the All-Star game, whatever slates they whip up. By the way, if you're looking for hockey projections, we have tonight is, what is it, USA-Finland? I did get them up there yesterday for the Canada-Sweden game. And USA-Finland tonight. That's at 8 o'clock. I didn't get to them yet, but I'll have them up after this show. So figure 6, somewhere around there. You'll have them at least an hour before the slate, which is all you really need. It's showdown slate anyway. So let's get into this thing. Vika Zubac coming up pretty nicely on the DraftKings slate. He's a very popular piece over there, but 52%, one of the few quality big men on this slate. 7,600, not a bad price to pay for 1.19 per minute. And honestly, pretty solid minutes in the lower mid 30s. Among bigs, that's very reliable. Getting a guy who goes out and plays 32, 33 minutes a night is super valuable. So anytime you get Zubac on a slate like this, absolutely love that spot. Going up against, even with the bigs active, not really a threat there. So like the upside for Zubac. Power says, Syndicate Sports and I were talking good about you the other day. I appreciate that, buddy. Thank you very much. Yeah, anytime you can spread the word, somebody mentions you're out somewhere, you're in watching some other show, and somebody says, hey, whatever happened to that Terry guy? Just drop it in. You don't have to be out there banging the drum, advertising or getting in people's faces, being trollish or anything about it. But somebody asks, you point the way, help grow things a little bit. We are still trying to get to that 1,000 subscribers. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button, just do that real quick. That does actually help if we can crack that 1,000. We need 125 people. So tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your family. Subscribe in your dog's name, create fake accounts. I don't care. Whatever you got to do. Just let's get that thing over 1,000. Anyway. But I appreciate your Power. Kyrie, assuming he's out there, we're getting Kyrie in half of our lineups on FanDuel, 44%, way above the field on DraftKings, nicely above the field on FanDuel. Looks like a great spot. Again, I do not like that game, but I do like Kyrie Irving, especially with all those guys missing. 1.10 per minute on the season on nearly 26% usage, but sees a rate uptick in this kind of a situation. I've got Kyrie in the 1.2s for today. That's where he plays in this configuration of that team. So as long as he's out there, I think he looks like a very good option. And we are coming up a little bit more than double the field, I think. So not a bad look at 9,300 on DraftKings, 9,100 on FanDuel, even better. Point guard only on both sides, totally works. Small slate like this, totally works. And at a point, we do want to just be looking on a 5-gamer. We just want to be taking some of these raw scoring upside guys. If you can construct a lineup that just has 3 of the top-end guys who are the 3 most likely guys, and we did this on the 4-gamer the other day, if you can just get the 3 most likely guys to put up the highest scores, that's a really good starting point for a lineup, and you can do that on a slate of this size. On a 14-gamer like yesterday, you can't do anything like that. It's just pandemonium. And it changed 37 different times after lock. Lose until I win the millies here. What's up, buddy? Good to see you. Amen Thompson's another interesting one. We're getting way above the field on both sides. We do have a nice little pocket of leverage up here on some good players. Trey is crazy popular on both. We're only gently above the field on him on DraftKings at 44%. Again, we're above the field significantly on FanDuel at 70%. He's owned something like he is on the DraftKings slate. But getting to a nice chunk of Amen is interesting. 1.05 per minute on DraftKings, 1.09 per minute on FanDuel. Point guard small forward on the DraftKings slate. Shooting guard small forward on the FanDuel slate. 9,000 FanDuel, 8,600 DraftKings. Different across sites, but coming up kind of similarly. We got essentially the same exposure. He's above the value threshold on FanDuel, slightly below on DraftKings. Michael Nack says, how bad is the NBA product right now? I mean, it really depends. Like, they need to fix some things with these. Like, there's no reason in the world that a team can't just tell us by 6:30 for a 7:30 game who's playing and who's not. Right? And they don't have to hold it till 6:31 to tell us, or 7:01 to tell us after like a slate locks, right? Especially the way that the league is partnered with the DFS sites, especially the way the league is partnered with the betting sites. And I know to a degree the betting sites like the chaos. But you would think there would be a bit more of a crackdown on getting that wrangle. And I'm not even talking about guys not playing. I'm fine with guys if the team philosophy is rest and so on and so forth. My team doesn't personally do that. I'm a Knicks fan. Our guys just go out and play because they like playing basketball. But, I'm fine with that if that's the philosophy, if that's what the numbers say they should be doing. But just let us know. There's no reason in the world that it needs to be secret like this and done like on the half hour like this. And it's so dumb. If you're not on a back-to-back and your team is playing at 7 o'clock, you have to have your lineup set. These are the guys who are available by 5. Is that crazy? You can't know by 5 p.m. who's going to play at 7 o'clock? It's just insanity that they let these teams do this with that kind of a thing. So that aspect of the product, I think, is bad. But going back to Michael Knack's question, or Michael Knack's, I know it was probably a rhetorical question that I can just latch on to. But going back to that, like any given game, I think the NBA product is super high level. It's an objectively better product now than it was, say, in the 90s. And I know the 90s were the glory days for a lot of us and Michael and all that stuff and everything. And that's when I grew up watching basketball. I love those days, believe me. But I love those days more for the personalities, the superstardom, the national focus on, how big those guys were and everything. I don't love a 72 to 71 NBA Finals game. And I'm exaggerating a little. But that was bad basketball. A lot of mid-range jumpers. We had dunks and getting to the rack, right? But settling for mid-range jumpers, overtaking threes, right? We've perfected the game now. So to me, it's a better product now, game by game. And that's also part of why I still do believe that Michael's the best ever, because Michael would play a radically different style now than he was back then with that same talent. So you don't come in here telling me that Michael's not still the GOAT. Just to throw that in there. Tiz has it. Garrett Crochet may pitch for the Red Sox, or he may not. First pitch decision. That's exactly what they do. It's like, how could you not know? I mentioned that before in the baseball channel in Discord, though, with I think it was Cubs said the Red Sox looking good. There's a lot riding for the Red Sox on Garrett Crochet's arm staying attached. He's high up on my list of potential catastrophes. I actually traded him away at the end of the season last year. Could have kept him for just this year for $1. But I got some pieces for my failed run at the title last year. Pitching staff's okay. We can fade that. Especially because, again, I think he's in trouble. Not in trouble, but if you were making lists of candidates for not great results on arm outcomes, he'd be on it. Anyway, continuing on with this basketball slate, why don't we? Let's get some guards up on the board. So in the guards, we've already talked about these top three guys, but any of those top three should be in, or really two of those top three should probably be in the majority of lineups. Jose Alvarado can go into that bucket as well. He's just coming out of that New Orleans side of that with everybody out. Jose Alvarado takes a step forward in rate. He takes a nice little uptick. He's playing at 0.97 for the season and just looks damn good on this slate. He's another guy who's going to be popular because he's super affordable, $5,000 on both sites. Point guard only, so you're getting a lot of him and Kyrie together at the point on FanDuel, and you're getting a lot of him in one spot and Kyrie in the other guard spot on the DraftKings slate. But definitely looking very good, and having him and Trey Murphy, no issues putting them together from the New Orleans side, anticipating questions that might come up. Cam Whitmore as a value square, 25 minutes for $4,600. He's small forward on the FanDuel slate. He's got the multi-position on DraftKings, a little bit more valuable on DK, but he is above the value threshold on both sides. 5.11 on the FanDuel slate, 5.64 on DraftKings. So looking like a very strong piece, 30%, and we are above the field on Whitmore on the FanDuel side, and then on DraftKings, 40.6%, and nicely above the field. So definitely looking like a square where you can dunk some shares into. 4,300 is a really good price. Played at 0.97 for the season. For today, I have him at exactly his 0.97. He is another guy, he's not without shares, but we're not quite double the field in this range, but a nice little chunk on top of the field there. This one I don't like really at all. I have no faith in Alec Burks whatsoever here. I gave him 26 minutes today. He played 28-2 last night. He put up 31-3. He is capable of breaking off 1+ per minute games. Last year he played at a 0.89 for the season. This year in very limited time, 16 and change minutes a night over the course of the season, he's seen way less usage. He's performed way lower end. But he's very cheap. Point guard, shooting guard eligible. Beyond the Rabbit Hole says Sabonis and Draymond or Jimmy and Zubac. I'm going to guess, given where Zubac was, that it's probably that one. Just not sure where Jimmy's going to come up. I mean, Zubac is our top overall guy in our top 150 lineups on the DraftKings, assuming you're talking DK. Jimmy, meh. 8,000, small forward, power forward eligible. We're getting him 5% of the time. He's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with grabbing some Jimmy Butler shares. But not coming up like a absolute monster. Why is his DK number not coming up? That's weird. Oh, it's probably something from the new team. I wonder what, but that search is against his name. It's weird that his number's not coming up. I got to figure that out. This is just the show draft board. This doesn't dashboard. Oh, because he added the third to his name in Golden State. I forgot. Way to add that to everything. All right, let's just do this. Actually, no. Wait, we can't do that. Because then I got to do it on all the different boards. What's what here? FanDuel DK stats mins. All right. There he is. So, yeah, again, Jimmy's fine. He's been playing a little bit of an uptick in his limited action with Golden State so far. Had a little bit of an accident on the court last night, if you saw that. It's the only thing that could have been, right? I don't think sweat builds up like that quickly. You're on FanDuel. Rabbit hole. All right. So Zubac a little bit less valuable on the FanDuel slate. We still got a ton of them at 32%, but we're more level with the field there. I do still think he's probably our best bet at center, though. He's our most highly exposed center eligible player, and you're putting him next to, comparable options would be like Sabonis for a significantly higher price. Nas is interesting, but you can get Nas alongside him at power forward. Şengün would be the most direct comp. He's 500 more, projected essentially the same. And I would probably prefer Zubac. Take the discount. Bam would be kind of similar for a few points less, more public ownership. We're lower on him. So, yeah, I kind of like Zubac there. I think that would remain the answer. And Sabonis was on your other side, wasn't he? Yeah, Sabonis was on your other side of that. So given that we're getting Zubac so significantly more than Sabonis, I would say that it's probably the Zubac side. And then Draymond is actually on this board too, and he didn't really come up. So pretty strongly Jimmy and Zoo for right now. Steven Youngitude is here. Hey, what's up, my brother? Wish everybody luck on this slate today. Always give the best, give you a listen, my brother. Appreciate you, bud. Yeah, as Power points out, Fultz is on the Kings. And he's not on the DFS slates. I doubt they add him. I talked about it before. It's just going to be like a void on the slate, right? It'll be this invisible bubble that passes through and maybe saps some minutes away. But the way that the Kings run, again, like these are the minutes that he could fit into. He's not really going to sap minutes from any of those guys, I don't think. So we're talking about like maybe Jake LaRavia gives him 4 minutes. Maybe, but these guys aren't exactly positional matches. So, yeah, maybe 2 minutes come out of, he plays 35, he plays 35. But, the actual impact, there are not really minutes to give to Markelle Fultz projection-wise anyway. Yesterday, I did carve out, 18, 20 minutes. I forget what it was for Alex Len. I took a bubble out from the Lakers yesterday because of that. But for Fultz, I really don't know that that's actually going to happen. Yeah, he's available. I don't know that he's going to play impactful minutes. If we get somebody out, that becomes a different story. Theodore Parson says, feels like Ware is not projected high enough going against a Mavs team with no center. So everything's a range. Right? I'm only going to give... Oops. We're only going to give him so much. There he is. He's played at 105 for the season. Now, you have to keep in mind, part of this is informed by the overall game environment. I actually have him playing at a slightly higher rate than he's played this season. Now, he's seen an uptick in production in spots in his starting role, but you got to remember, this is a game with a 221.5 point total. They've got a 111.5 implied total. It's a fairly low-end game. It's not the lowest on the board. Or actually, no, I'm sorry. That's the old number. This game's now at 216.5. That original number on the board here was from this morning, the other one I was reading. So this game's down at 216.5 with the Heat favored by 1.5. So there's just not a lot to work with as far as the dome of scoring in which these guys are going to play this game. Does that mean that Ware's not capable of going off and having a monster here against no center? Absolutely not. I totally agree with you. It's a good spot for him because of that. But as far as projecting it, you don't want to just automatically hand him something that he's not necessarily due. And again, I've got him. It's 2/100ths of a point on top of what he normally produces because of that low end score game total. In a game against a better team that had that same deficiency among big men, he would be projected higher just because the game environment, there would be more available scoring. There would be more available everything. So the game environment would float him to a naturally higher advantaged score. You could easily go in and just hand him a point or a plus on whatever your optimizer of choice or whatever is. Like if you give him just... If you give him 1 fantasy point exactly, it takes him from the 1.05 to 1.10. You're giving him 5/100ths of a point per minute. And you can escalate things from there. But I think he's, keep in mind, these are median projections, right? This is not saying this is exactly what he's going to do. This is saying if you run this 50,000 times, this is what he's going to do. If you run this, it's about the most likely outcome, not what can he do, what is he most likely to do. What's up, Doug? There you go, Millie. Millie's on it. Michael Jordan created the conversation of the GOAT. Nothing else to say. Love it. If Bam is out, yeah, mash the wear button. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that Khalil Ware spot today. That could be a very interesting call. Among center-eligible DK players, you only have them like 1%. That, you know what that is maybe a just interesting little pocket of low-owned leverage that you could grab. See where his actual public number is. It'll go up if there's no Bam. But he's projected for low single digits. It's kind of interesting. The other thing to remember, though, is when he was truly hitting those marks, a week, 10 days ago, he was playing 30+, and he's seen a downturn. Last 4, I've got him at 26 today. Last 4 games, 24, 27, 26, 19. The games prior to that for 31, 34, 29, 43, a blip with a 23, but 35, 39, 34. That was his really strong stretch. In 26 minutes, 3 games back against Brooklyn, kind of a pushover team. Had 10 points, did have 14 boards. 10 points, 14 boards, 4 assists, a block, a steal. So this is a decent game. If you get that line, you'd obviously, he only went 4 for 12 from the field. You obviously like some more solid shooting from a big man. The other 2 games, the 2 most recent, were at OKC and against Boston. So the downturn in minutes in those 2 could be just somewhat, tough spot for the kid. So maybe we don't give that too much worry. The Philly game and the Brooklyn game, though, 19 minutes and 26 minutes, not ideal. I forget what happened in that Philly one. I think that was the game where he was just playing poorly, I think. I don't think it was foul trouble. I think we looked at that game going into the Brooklyn game. But there is at least upside there, right? If he gets 30 minutes in this spot, he's got significant upside when he's only 4 or 5% owned. So definitely somebody to at least keep in mind on a 5-game slate as a rotational piece. If you're building a handful of lineups, could you swap in a $6,100 Kel'el Ware for a $7,100 Nas Reed or a $5,200 Yves Missi, somebody like that? Absolutely. Could you swap them in if you're building 150 for a few of these Zubac shares even, or some of the $8,500 Şengün shares where we're already below the field on Şengün? Definitely. So yeah, that's a good call out. Appreciate that one. Doug saying this is one of the more difficult small slates. Yeah, it's really deceptively quiet right now too, Doug. I was saying that at the beginning of the show. Like, getting all three of those Utah bigs not even on the injury report really has me concerned. I feel like we're getting a late curveball with those guys. Just really tricky one. And not having, like, right now, crazy abundance of value, definitely making it a little bit tricky. Michael Knack says, go see the movie Green and Gold. What's Green and Gold? I don't know. I haven't heard of that. A lot of people here hanging out. Hit the like button if you get a chance. Green and Gold. Buck. Craig T. Nelson. Everybody likes Craig T. Nelson. Has been dairy farming in traditional ways for as long as anyone can remember in Green and Gold. He's anticipating passing the farm down to his granddaughter, Jenny, Madison Lawler. But she has other ideas. A movie even a Bears fan could love. The early Green and Gold reviews are in. Here's what they're saying. So I guess he's a Packers fan is the idea? Green and Gold Group marijuana dispensary. Now you got my attention. I hadn't heard of that one. I'll keep it in mind. Theodore Parson also said, yeah, just waiting for Steve Kerr to flip this slate on its head. That's the thing. I really do absolutely feel like we've got curveballs coming in the next couple of hours. It's 5 o'clock. This is an 8 o'clock start. Things are going to change. Just keep that in mind. And even if we don't get, like, announced curveballs, you know, like I was saying before, especially around guys like Kyrie and Clay, who are technically listed as questionable. We get them. We might not get them for 34 or 36. In Clay's case, like 28. It might be short nights for some of these guys, night before the All-Star break. Kerr is just, they run that unpredictable deep rotation anyway. I think I had 13 guys projected yesterday, and they ended up playing 12. It's just what they do. SGA, somebody asked, is one of the most highly projected players. I think he's the only guy on either site projected over 50 fantasy points. He's the highest projected player, the highest fantasy per minute rate, I believe, on the entire slate. Yep. Highest per minute rate, highest overall projection, highest everything for SGA. Just by virtue of price and kind of what Doug was just referring to as far as the crunch of this slate. Right now, there's just not a lot of value, so it's very difficult to get SGA's 11-3 on FanDuel. We got 0 in our top 150. As good as he is, it's a tight squeeze in your suitcase for this trip we're taking tonight. 11,000 on DraftKings, we got him a little bit. 4.58, he's nearly a full point below our 5.5 value score, half a point below the 5.0 that we're looking for on FanDuel, but we did get him 4%. What I'll call out about that, though, is it's exactly the same thing as with Kel'el Ware, except you're getting a much, much better player. This is level with the field. So any given share of SGA is absolutely fine. And as I was saying before, on a 5-gamer, you do want to consider raw scoring value and raw ceiling to a degree. It's just you have to do that through the spectrum of price, and right now his price is very difficult to reach even in that capacity. But any share of SGA is an advantage because the slate is handicapped by that as well. The slate is not getting there. He's not going to come up easily through optimizers, through sims, etc., etc. So absolutely looking like a monster. Or like a monster lurking under the waves is the way I should have said it, because he's not actually a monster on the slate, but he could definitely bend the slate to his will more so than anybody on this slate. Steven says, yeah, I would say on FanDuel he has to score you 55 plus to even pay it off, but I would say more, which is crazy because of the price. Yeah, it's 60, 65 plus. If Kyrie and Clay are out, is Brandon Williams a play? I hadn't really considered if they're both out totally yet, but what did they do recently? Let's see. I mean, he's 3,000 for one thing. 35 on FanDuel's a dead min price on both sites. He would pick up, I have to think, at least a handful of minutes. Because at that point, we're talking about Dinwiddie, Exum, Hardy, and then, like, to a degree, Marshall and Christie. So, yeah, I do think he gets in there for, like, you're competing with, it depends probably somewhat on Exum in that situation. And then you're really competing with Jaden Hardy for minutes there. And probably the ball handling responsibility, you would think, will go in Williams' direction. So I don't know what the minutes will actually look like, but considering that he's at the dead min price and he's on the board, 0.85 per minute for the season. Technically, his unmodified number for today is 0.93 in the model, but I didn't change anything because he's only at a 2-minute projection. But yeah, I think that would potentially get interesting. Played 15, put up a 22-2 in last night's game. That was kind of in the back of my mind. I was going to say about 16 minutes would probably be where I'd land him. Like, Hardy only ended up playing 5 in that one. So I do think, yeah, he would probably leapfrog Hardy there. I would probably project him at like 16 and then, mess around with, see how things fall, see whether Exum's there or not. Yeah, I think so. I think you're onto something there. And that's definitely, again, those 3 guys are one of the stronger spots of candidacy to really tweak this slate and change it. Let's get back to that guard board here. We were like 2 or 3 guys down the board. Where were we? Let's see. We talked Alvarado. We talked Cam Whitmore. We referenced briefly. We're above the field kind of nicely on both. Not radically high distributions. Burks, I think, is where we were. 3,600. This is one where, man, I hope that Brandon Williams emerges at mid price so that the Alec Burks goes away. But this is kind of how you're paying for any of those SGA types, is by uncomfortable plays like Burks. Cam Whitmore at 43 is a much more comfortable player, and we're getting a ton of them at 43. There are not a lot of high-end $3,000 plays on this slate. Chris Dunn at 37 in a 22-minute projection. Put up 39-1 in 21 minutes yesterday. Jesus. Where'd that come from? That's another one that could have been at the top of the board. Not based on yesterday's numbers by any means. This is entirely about his price going through that number, but guards do succeed against Utah. By that same token, I mentioned Harden before. He's right there. We're basically level with the field in 1 in 4 or thereabouts on both sites. I think you're fine if you're dead even with the field. I do think you could take a little bit of upside, but I would also say maybe James gets a few minutes off the night before the All-Star break, and maybe that benefits like the Chris Dunns of the world to a couple more minutes. I have him at 35. It's what he plays, but that's another spot I'm a little skeptical about. I will say, they're in Salt Lake City, so that probably helps because there's nothing for James to go do. So maybe he is out there for his full run. Norm Powell, 35. Benefits similarly by going up against that inept Utah team that benefits guards so much. 23% below the field on DraftKings for 74. He's got multi-guard eligibility on both sites. It's a better play by $100 of value on FanDuel, coming up at a 5.22. That's well over our value threshold on the FanDuel slate. A little bit below, but still looks good on DraftKings. Totally playable over here. Any given lineup is totally fine. But overall, I think this is a good position to have below the field. On FanDuel, since he is above the value threshold, I think directionally, if you do anything, kick it up above, but being with the field is probably also fine. Christie put up a 29 in 39 minutes. The minutes are more interesting to me than the actual result there. He's not a good per minute player, so that's about on pace. 0.69 per minute FanDuel, 0.70 per minute for the season DraftKings. Got him right in that territory today and looks decent enough to deliver something similar, but that amounts to a 4.58 value score on FanDuel. We got him 5% of the time below the field. I'm perfectly happy being there. If those other guys aren't in, though, and there's just more to do, then he would benefit from a little bit of an uptick. On the DraftKings slate, we got him 20% of the time. He's $5,200, $500 difference across sites. Same eligibility positionally, not above the value threshold, but closer to it. Looks like a more playable piece there. And really, this is like your bottom for Max Christie. I do think there's a track where he gets more and more interesting on DK as things progress toward 8 o'clock. Michael Nack says, we're built different in Wisconsin. I guess that's the crux of the green and gold flick. Worst case, I promise you, when it's out on whatever streamer or digital or whatever, like, this time next week, with the way things go these days, I'll watch it. I don't know if I'm going to get out to go see it. The one that surprised me yesterday, I had a thing popped up. The Captain America movie comes out today. That was like major marketing push, I feel like, a few weeks ago. And I know there were Super Bowl commercials and everything. It's obviously a marketing push, but I feel like it really got tamped down a little bit. I don't know if that's a bad sign for the flick or if that's just Marvel not wanting to piss people off with some of the comparisons that were being made with the Red Hulk. I don't know if you caught that nonsense. Anyway, yeah, that caught me by surprise that was this weekend that one's coming out. So if I end up going to a movie over the break, it's probably going to be that. Just I'm a sucker for the big blockbuster Marvel flicks. But I promise I will watch Green and Gold. Remind me, though. But when I see it pop up, I'll definitely check it out. Too much Nintendo for SGA. Yeah, I'm with you. Again, it's too much for this slate the way we have it now. In a vacuum, if you could give me anybody, if I could have anybody on this slate, let's say that was the rule. You can zero out anybody's salary. You can take any one item and shrink it down to no size and throw it in your suitcase in the analogy. What do you take? It's SGA, without question. If he was free, you would put him in every lineup. And obviously free is an extreme version of an exaggeration. If he was accidentally 9,500 on this slate, you would put him in almost every lineup. He is that good, and he is that good by comparison to like everybody else on the slate. But the way that this slate functions, it's not even his fault. It's the fault of not having a bunch of $3,700 guys that we can use. If you pile several of these guys in, then you can get there. But that's not working out to our best lineup configurations today. So that's like the ebb and flow of that whole conversation around how those salaries function. So yes, I agree. Too much dinero for this slate for SGA. So far. Keon Ellis, mix and match kind of a guy. We're above the field on FanDuel. That's fine, 28%. I don't know that I like being that high up on Keon Ellis, but he's very cheap, $4,700. He does have reliable minutes at 29, 30, somewhere thereabouts. We could see it dip a little bit. There's maybe a little bit of potential haircut there. He'd be a victim possibly of some false minutes. So something to be aware of. Maybe that dips to like 26 and becomes a little less valuable. That's why maybe I'm more comfy in the 18 to 25% range and more level with the field, like we're at on DraftKings. 4,400 on DK, but a functional piece of this slate no matter what. Dunk is interesting. 12% on DraftKings for 4,100 on FanDuel for the same price with multi-position eligibility. We actually got him less. Just 2% on FanDuel despite the shooting guard small forward eligibility. Same price. Kind of surprised by that. I thought we'd see him a little bit more. Not that he stands out. Mediocre projection, just 26 minutes. Mediocre performer, 0.76 FanDuel, 0.81 DraftKings. We got him a little bit more on DraftKings because of that uptick in production. 5.18 value score over there is closer to the mark, or similar actually. 5.18 versus 4.86. But he's a little bit more valuable to us on DraftKings. 12% level with the field. A few more, a few less is fine. I don't think it burns you in either direction. Bruce Brown, mix and match play, comes up level with the field on both sides. 12%, essentially 12% on both. He's fairly priced. He does have decent per minute numbers. Not great, but on this slate, it works at 0.87 this year, 0.80 last year, but on lower usage. Granted, most of these minutes, or all of these minutes, were not with New Orleans. But we know that there's at least a functional NBA player there. So I don't mind having him pop up like this, but I would probably prefer him like on this kind of trajectory relative to the field. Call that the field's probably like 15, 18, and we're 11, something like that. I think that makes more sense. So FanDuel, maybe you want to be like 8, somewhere around there. Just have a position on Bruce Brown. Jalen Green, solid player, very solid minutes, decent enough performer for this slate to maybe get involved at 73, 72. I think he's at worst a rotational piece. Coming in at those prices, he's a rotational piece for Norm Powell, probably. If you're undercutting some of your Norm Powell shares out of here, you want to move them to a few shares of Jalen Green, I think that's totally fine. Malik Monk fits that exact same category. Those three guys create a little bit of a rotation on both sides where you can get any one of those guys for in that $7,000 price range. I think to at least a little bit of a degree, the ceilings for CJ McCollum and Zach LaVine are still offset from those guys slightly. It's very, very slight because this year, performance is very similar for that entire pool of guys. So you can really say all of those four and Norm Powell can kind of go into that same bucket, and it's just all the guys priced in the $7,000 price tier. That's a big pool of shares that you can kind of consider not all the same, but similar. And Norm is, I think, the most valuable guy given the pricing and given how he came up in the Sims. But since we're not really building a big position, a big plus position, let's say we could take this down some. Take it down to a little bit of a negative position, and maybe we build a little bit of a plus position on CJ with that, where we were getting CJ in pretty big exposure level with the field. Same thing with Zach LaVine. I don't know that I would do it necessarily with these two where I'm pushing them all the way back because you're only going to eventually reach the field. But a few shares of those guys as rotational pieces, whether they're coming out of these two or whether they're coming out of Norm Powell up here, I think are fine. And you can see that in the projections all being essentially the same. You can see that in the minutes all being essentially the same. A lot of guys coming out of the same game. Kind of a big miasma of meh. I should have said massive miasma of meh. Would have been so much more alliterative. Isaiah Collier, 31 minutes. Definitely has a role here. He's very cheap at $5,900 for the potential upside. We're getting him 36% of the time. He's a 5.30 value score on FanDuel. With no Clarkson, no Sexton, he should have plenty to do tonight. On DraftKings, he's 62. Going back to our conversation over the last few shows, I feel like DraftKings got that price right. 6,200, a little bit tighter. We only got him 4.6% of the time. I do think you could take a few more shares than that, but he's not exactly mathing out where we want him on DK. 5.30 value on FanDuel is way above our threshold. 4.95 is way below the DraftKings one. We're looking for 5.5 on DK. Beyond the rabbit hole, Dort, Burks, or Dunn? It's probably not Dort. Where is good old Lou? Yeah, Lou didn't really come up that much. Good player, good NBA player, good defender, very good defender, but not much of a fantasy scorer. 0.76 per minute FanDuel, 0.76 per minute DraftKings, only 13.2% usage too, just not the most enthusiastic player on the old offensive end there, but a very good NBA player and part of their success there. So not really looking great. Who are the other ones? Dunn and Burks. It's going to come up looking like Alec Burks for right now. Just remembering where he was on the board. Again, I wouldn't call you crazy for grabbing a little bit of Chris Dunn, especially coming off that monster performance. Apparently, I totally missed that. But coming off a monster, I've got him right back at those same minutes, but I do feel like there could be a few additional minutes there if they do go the route of, maybe James doesn't play the full run. Also, this game at a 9.5 point spread could get away from the Jazz pretty quickly. So James might not end up playing the full run there, or we just might see them, kick some minutes down the board just overall. So I think there's nothing but upside from Chris Dunn here. The way it's looking right now, we're getting him below the field, but at the highest exposure on FanDuel, and then we're getting him in the middle on DraftKings, but below the field on both sites. Alec Burks on DraftKings is the only positive spot on those. 5.42 is a little bit shy of our value threshold, but very close to it. 33% exposed for the 3,600. It's a somewhat price minutes thing between the two. If I gave that 4-minute difference the other way to Chris Dunn, he'd probably come up more, or at least it would be a tie here. I would say probably I'm more inclined to give it to Chris Dunn, and then you're just hoping for the minutes, which I think is kind of a realistic hope. I just have less faith in the Burks spot. This difference is entirely created by those 4 minutes. There's really not much other difference. But you'd be gambling on the minutes is really the answer. Where were we on guards? I think we're mostly through this. 5:30. We've really been on for an hour already? Jeez. Just looking for some interesting spots to talk about. Malik Monk came up lighter than the field on both. But again, to me, the Kings are just very much the big wheel. You just spin it, and one or two of those guys will come up, given the minutes that the starters get basically every game, and the quality of those 5 guys, and then the first 2 guys off the bench. There's plenty of run there. There's plenty of quality. You just got to pick your spots, and the best way to go about it is be below the field on most of them, unless somebody kind of pops for price, and then have a share of all of them across your lineups. It's really the best approach to the Kings right now. Levine's same story. 13% of him, level with the field, 7% on DraftKings, level with the field, 7,500. Not a bad price, good positioning, decent enough projection, but we're below the value threshold. It's the exact same thing for both those players. Buddy, not really coming up in 28. DraftKings-wise, we got a little bit of them for 5,000. Different eligibility, shooting guard, point guard on FanDuel, but didn't come up. Shooting guard, small forward on DraftKings. Any given lineup, you could have a share a buddy or two, but not looking like a great spot. Not the greatest matchup for offensive production either, Golden State and Houston. Conley, if he plays, not really looking slate relevant. Conley's probably more relevant to the slate if he does not play for the impact that he creates. Right now, Alexander Walker, buried down here. Got him at 26, didn't matter. 16 minutes on Rob Dillingham. Doesn't really matter. Not sure how much Dillingham ends up mattering, but Noah would be the guy that would pop into starters minutes and maybe get a little bit more interesting. That said, 48, 5,000, since he didn't come up at all at those prices in 26-minute projection. Not sure how big an impact he's going to have. It's not like he's 3,800. Guy who is in the 3,000s, Davion Mitchell, but he's such a low-end performer that he barely matters. 3,700 with a 26-minute projection you would think would have a bigger impact on DraftKings, but you just can't get him to a big enough projection to really matter. A 0.69 per minute player in the worst game of the night. Just not there. 6% below the field. I don't think it's Davion Mitchell night. I mean, Kez mix and match shares across sites. Tyler Hero looks like we're undercutting the field pretty significantly, but that probably means the field's in the 10 to 12 range when we're at 4. Same thing on DraftKings. Any given share, Tyler Hero, totally fine. And he's not mispriced. You could, at 79 on the FanDuel slate, you could throw him into like the most high-priced guy in this group of $7,000 guys. He compares somewhat favorably to like Malik Monk here. At 78, there's some back and forth there. So you could consider him a part of that group as well. He's slightly higher at 83 on DraftKings, so it's more of a stretch to throw him into that group, but you could. Steph at 89, I'd love to consider at least a little. 1.3% though, level with the field. The upside there is that the public's not going to be there. He's owned essentially in the low single digits on both sites by the public. So any given share of Steph could be beneficial. We're talking about 1.23 per minute on FanDuel, 1.31 per minute on DraftKings, 89, 9,000. He's not bad, but he's also not the Steph of old. Not the greatest matchup again, going up against Houston. Brendan Podziemski right next to him, not really coming up at all. And then just a couple guys as far as minutes go. Dinwiddie could be one to at least watch a little bit. 51, 5,000 is effectively low priced enough where he could get a little bit more interesting if we get no Kyrie and no some of those other guards. So just watch what happens with Dinwiddie. I've got him at 24 and he doesn't matter at all. But if he pops to 29, 30, 30 plus, then he's going to matter. As we jump to forwards and centers, hit that like, hit that subscribe. Check out rotoscouts.com. If you're new here, everything at Rotoscouts under $1 a day to access all of it. I'm projecting NHL every main slate, NBA every main slate. We were doing NFL, but that's over. MLB is right around the corner, and I'm going to starting this coming week-ish. We're going to have some season-long content for MLB this year. So I'm going to put up some rankings. I'm going to do some articles. These are guys I like. These are guys I don't like. Sleepers, whatever you want to call them. During the season, I have no idea what that'll look like yet. I'm thinking at least I'll try and do like a weekly waiver wire piece, something like that for the MLB season. I'm also going to try and put together a feature just about our Dynasty League that I always talk about. And I'll include like snapshots of our ridiculous rules document. Reads like the Constitution. We'll get that stuff going. But check out rotoscouts.com. Also, these sims, they run over at acemind.io. Take our projections, pop them in at acemind.io. Run some sims, get basically these results. Promo code rotoscouts all in caps. 20% off your first month over there. Let's keep on rolling. By the way, there's a link to our Discord in the chat that I already dropped in there. If you're not in there, come hop in, join the community. The OMG Father says, dang, I missed the whole show. Good news. The slate doesn't start till 8 o'clock. You got plenty of time to rewind, listen to us on 2X. If you jump back and go to 2X, you'll probably catch up by the end of the show the way that I talk. OMG Father says, oh, sweet. Michael Nack says, hit the damn like button. Yeah. There you go. Got to be more dictatorial about these things. FanDuel says Dunn got an injury last night, but isn't on the injury report. Let's take a look. Why is he not coming up here? The note is just as cryptic on this side. Despite the only thing that matters is that he's not on the actual official injury report, by the way. I just wanted to see what it was. And the note is, despite reportedly suffering an undisclosed injury, Dunn is good to go. So no further details. Maybe he stubbed his toe or something. Yeah. Or apparently nothing to worry about. That didn't even hit my radar as I was putting this stuff together. So let's see. Amongst centers and forwards, we already talked about Zubac, but again, dominating the top of the DraftKings board, 52.6%. 7,600 is just a very, very good price to find him and to secure 30-plus minutes at the center spot. On a short slate that is short on high-end center value, I think Zubac looks terrific here. And it's an upside spot going against that pushover Utah team. The only thing to worry about is maybe a little bit of, fourth quarter haircut in terms of the minutes. Maybe we don't quite get to the 33, but if we get him 29, 30, and they're in that situation, he has presumably done enough work to pay off the value on a 5-game slate. Murphy, with everybody out, we just go there. We know what it looks like. We've had it a bunch of times already this season. The price is still effective enough. I wish it were cheaper, but we've got him above the value threshold there by a nice chunk. A little bit closer to the mark here, but still above and getting a ton of them on both sides. He is more valuable on the FanDuel slate, though, even at the slightly higher price. Amen, I mentioned earlier. Just absolutely tremendous. Love that we're above the field at those 44 numbers and a straight arrow up above the field. He is owned by the public at less than half that. I find that really interesting. Just outrageous minutes lately. 41.5, put up 55.5 fantasy points over their last handful of games. Forty-one, 37, 37, 40. Monster minutes. Averaged 38.5 over their last 10, 39.2 over their last 5. Got him at 39 today. It's generous. But I think he's gonna see it. Or obviously close enough. I'm not taking him above 40. But looks tremendous. I do like the positional eligibility a little bit better on DK with that point guard small forward. I just think the functionality of that is really interesting and helpful on the DraftKings builds. But very valuable, very interesting spot on both sites for a good per minute performer who's priced appropriately. Cam is a little piece of value. 4,300. We talked about him before at the guard spot, but again, looking like a pretty decent piece. 40% exposed above the field. Kessler Edwards is a guy we haven't talked about yet. With everybody out for Dallas, he's getting minutes. 3,800 on FanDuel. He's a small forward only. We have him in 50% of all lineups. That's concerning. 5.53 on the value mark, though. I mean, there's nothing holding him back at that price as far as the value scores go. 5.53 on DraftKings. We're a little bit closer for the 3,800 over there. It's 0.66 per minute on DK, 0.71 per minute on FanDuel. There is a little bit of a difference site to site on the player. So we got him less, a little bit closer to the field on the DraftKings slate where we're running away with some shares against the field on FanDuel. What I will throw in is, with these low usage guys, and in 10 minutes a night over 25 games, he's seen 8.1% usage, which is probably the lowest in the league for anybody who's played more than 10 minutes a night in more than 25 games. Can't imagine many people are doing less than that. But there is a little production there. So for the money, it's very fragile as far as what that outcome might look like. But you got a point per minute yesterday. So it's there. It's the worst game environment with probably the worst player, but it's there. Matkovic is kind of interesting. 4,600 power forward and center eligible on DK. 5.35 on the value scale. Not quite at our 5.5. But at worst, he's a really interesting pivot option from some of these guys. He's not unpopular, but our 26% is above the field. So considering his popularity versus some of those guys, I do think that's an interesting potential pivot point. Got him at 28 minutes. Again, the Pelly's suffering with nobody available. So he's going to benefit there. 25% on the FanDuel slate. We got him in a decent number of shares, probably mostly going through power forward. He is above the value threshold on the FanDuel slate, though. I didn't realize that rebounding column was cut off. Man, this is Rock. I miss you too. I'm here every day, buddy. Where are you? Not every day. I wasn't here yesterday. Slate got away from us yesterday, as I said. Those 14 games, it was just the first cut went up. Then I did an initial update. Usually I do like a first cut, just put a stake in the ground, and then I update that, and then I've got like a little time. That first cut went up. Then I did one that never even saw the light of day on the site, and then I had to go back and unwind that one, and it just cascaded down from there. There was just never a point where there was a stable 5 minutes. At one point, I had to take a leak so bad without being able to get up that it just kind of went away, which is never good. You ever have that? You're on a long car ride, and you're like, I got to pee for like 2 hours, and then you got to go so bad, it's just like, I don't have to go anymore. Dell, what's going on? Javier Hernandez, good day, everyone. Good to see everybody. Hit that like, subscribe to the channel. Bunch of people in here. Again, check out rotoscouts.com. I won't go through the whole plug again, but rotoscouts.com is where all these projections live. It's where we're all hanging out. I'll drop the link to the Discord in again. Discord's always free, by the way. So even if you don't plan on subscribing at the site, any of that, come hang out in the Discord. No pay to play in the Discord. Mir Coffee, questionable. But if we're getting projectable run out of him, I don't mind the option. It's another guy that's just super low end, but he's at least very cheap. 3,800 on DraftKings. We're getting him 26% of the time. That is level with the field. I would probably want to take a position and like end up in a spot like this. So maybe you're drawing him down to like 2018, somewhere in that range. But I do think he's effective, or at least as effective as any other low-end per minute guy. 0.65 out of him versus 0.66 for 3,800 out of Kessler Edwards is not all that much difference. Better matchup for Amir Coffey if he's out there. DeRozan is never my favorite option, but he is coming up. We're getting him less than the field. But out of all those Kings, I think we're getting the most raw exposure to him while still being below the field. But he's very much just a member of that roulette wheel for whoever might come up for shares or for success on any given slate. So some shares totally fine. 1 in 5 lineups, totally fine. But I like that we do have a little bit of a position and we're below the field on DeRozan there. Najee just kind of looking like a rock-solid mid-board play. Dead even with the field at 26% on FanDuel for 55, both forward spots, same price, both forward spots on DraftKings, 20% and dead even with the field. I have no issues with that across the board. He's just a hyper-average player. The price is average. He plays two positions that are, functional. His exposure in our lineups is totally average. He sees league average usage almost exactly on the nose. He has, if I total these up, it would probably be the average fantasy point production. Let's just do it. Yeah, average is 0.92, a little higher than I thought. Little higher. The hell were we? I don't know where he went. Milk carton in the car solves everything. You think I haven't done that in my life? Not a milk carton, but like a Gatorade bottle, something like that. Get the big jug of Gatorade. That'll solve all your problems. Milk carton, I feel like it's warm, doesn't really close all that well. Like even if you open it, I guess you got to have like the spout, but then you got to pee into the spout. Because if you open the whole milk carton, then it doesn't close up all the way. It just kind of folds back, and then it's like floppity up at the top. I don't think that works all that well. You can get some pee all over your car, Mike. Travis says, I can't see the top names on the sheet. What do you mean? What are you talking about, Trav? Javier says, yesterday in theory was Serbian Heritage Night in Denver, and that's why I took Jokic over Murray. I just wanted everyone to know that. Hey, you got to have your reasons. OMG Father says, I haven't seen a milk carton since high school 27 years ago. And those were way too small for a pee. Yeah, those little pint ones. Yeah. Yeah. You know what I had to go do? I had to go buy a thing of coffee filters. And I tell you what, in a world where we're up to like $1 an egg, where everything costs too much for too little, the fact that you can still get 16 and a half months worth of coffee filters for like $4.50, I'm not going to have to buy coffee filters for like a year and a half. I'm going to be 48 the next time I have to buy coffee filters. That was like the highlight of my week. It's probably my most secure investment right now. But yeah, not a lot of milk cartons going around in my life either. Anyway, where the hell were we? Najee, that was who we were talking about, decidedly average. So a couple points off the average total, but a highly average player at an average price. I don't mind the option. I do think you can get away with some Najee. Max Christie, we talked about when we were going over guards, but definitely also can benefit in that situation. And then OMP, definitely going to benefit. Played 24 last night, put up a little bit below a point per minute, right around his 0.88, 0.86 averages. But he's cheap. He's going to see some run. We got him at 47% on the FanDuel slate. That's a little bit concerning. I don't love that, but he's very cheap. He's one of the functional values. Power forward only. Power forward only for 48 on DraftKings. He's actually further below the value on DK. 17% exposed and below the field. I'd actually rather be here, I think, than all the way up here. This is just a more functional piece of value on the FanDuel slate. I'm going to just throw a little flag on that because I want to see why he's coming up quite so much on FanDuel. If I update that Vegas info, that might come down a little bit. He might come down slightly. It's just going to be via rate. I've got him a little higher because that's where he's been playing in this configuration, but that game environment has gotten so ugly that I think I might take the bonus that I gave away from him. I'm technically lighter in the projection than the site where the ownership comes from, though. But I think there's a little justification. I'm actually going to take a look at everybody in this game. Just because of how much that line shifted. It's all in the model, but then I haven't gone back and manicured it after the change. So I'm going to look at that. You might see a little bit less of OMP on the FanDuel slate than this. Again, I think you have some. 15, 20% feels a little bit better, but there is a little bit more value there. Let's not ignore the 5.21 value that we're currently at. Şengün above the value mark, 8,600. Not a bad price for a 1.36 per minute center. 85 on DraftKings. That's a good value for a good player. We just got to get him out there. 1.36 is, what, third highest on this slate? Among bigs, I think it's highest. Second highest. Who's better? Oh, Chet, but that doesn't really count. Discounting Chet, that's our highest per minute mark among center eligible players. So Şengün at worst on this slate is somebody who you can keep in your pocket as a back and forth guy with anybody from up here at comparable prices. You know, on DraftKings, if we're talking about the util spot, there's back and forth between like Amen Thompson and Şengün, 86 and 85. And just look at the per minute production difference. Yes, they're different positions. Let's look at that. Look how Şengün stands out at that $8,500 price when it comes to the per minute numbers. Chet obviously does too. It is 135. But again, I don't think Chet's really in play. I projected him for 26 minutes. He's played 25 on average. if we have him pop and you want to be there the day that he does pop to 32 minutes, especially if we don't hear about it ahead of time. But I don't think that's today. But this really stands out for value. You're getting less per minute production from these two guys for more money. Less per minute production from all these guys outside of SGA. On DraftKings, Şengün, that 136, is the second highest overall per minute production on the entire slate at any position. And he's only 8,500. Just need him to play. And then I do think he's an interesting option. With all that in mind, I was going to say maybe you grab a few more shares and level him back to the field. If you can find a way there, I don't think it's crazy to say that you could take him up even above the field. On FanDuel, that's a lot easier to do since we're right with the field. So if you're at 25-30 and you're building a plus position on him, it's not a crazy idea. It's at the expense of Zubac shares most directly, I would think. But it's not a crazy idea to just book again. Just you want to sometimes just consider it through the lens of just booking some of the most likely high scorers into your lineup on a short slate. Yeah, I don't love the B2Bs, but that's basically everybody. Could be a Ware night. Yeah, we talked about Ware a little bit earlier, Del. And I think he's just kind of sitting in a pocket of an interesting spot where the public's not there, and he does have upside. The most critical thing for him would be the 4 additional minutes that he really needs to hit the values that we were seeing him produce over the last. There's a 4-game downtick, and then before that was when he had his nice little emergence. So we need him back to those 30-minute runs. 2 of those games though one was against OKC, one was against the Celtics. So you could see why, a kid would potentially play less against those 2 teams. So I do think he's got the range back to being interesting. And given the short slate, the short position, and the matchup where there is no big man in Dallas today, definitely could get interesting in an awful hurry at that price. So yeah, Ware is on the board, and he's probably if we had to declare sneaky guy of the day, it comes with the corollary that he needs to get to 30 minutes. But if he does get to 30 minutes, he could easily be our sneaky guy of the day. What are those little Apple things that stalkers drop into girls' bags? Whatever those are, those little tags, those geotags. Sneaky play of the day, brought to you by geotagging. Tango, it was funny you mentioned Terrence Shannon. He was actually at the very start of the show, all the way at the top of the board, but not because of a result. I have him at 8 minutes right now, but like everybody on that squad, I would say that there's the potential to play a few additional minutes, depending on blowout, depending on just what they do with time off for some of the older players and so on and so forth. Night before the All-Star break, I think a lot of weird results are in play. So yeah, I wouldn't go chase it, but I do think there's the possibility. Back to our sort here. Coming up on 6 o'clock. Again, if you're looking for USA versus Finland hockey projections for tonight, they'll be up on the slate about a half hour after the show's over. And we're going to be another 10-15 on this show at most. So they're coming soon. Let's put just center eligible players on the board and just take a look at how the center position falls, because, yeah, that's really interesting. The only center-eligible player that we're getting significant exposure to on DraftKings is Zubac. 52%, obviously. That's massive. 26% is not insignificant for Makovic. And then everybody else below 20%. Totals out to 158, and usually that's going to be a bigger number because of these multi-position eligible guys. There's not a lot of quality at the center eligible position, whether you're playing them power forward or center, doesn't matter. But just among center eligible guys, there's not a lot of quality. So that's, again, getting back to that Ware thing, that's where that gets really interesting. With the public not being here, if he does top out, 30 plus points from him And I'm not giving an exact like target score or anything there, but like for every point above 30 that he gets, every one of his points above 30 is more valuable than every one of these guys' points above X. At no ownership publicly, that does get interesting in an awful hurry. Again, it's not standing out the way that we can project it, but the ceiling is there. So that is going back to whoever shouted that out originally, and then whoever just shouted it out a moment ago to put it back on our discussion board here at the end. Yeah, interesting. Michael Knack shouting out John Collins should not be ignored tonight. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. John Collins is just good. That said, at the beginning of the day, I wasn't expecting him to play. Not really coming up that much. 2% under the field. 2% under the field. It's kind of surprising because he's not expensive. 6,900, 7,200. He's kind of in that Kilo Ware bucket. Here's Ware right here. He's only a few spots further down. He's more expensive than Ware. Oh, he did have center eligibility. He was on that board. I just didn't see him. I want to go back to that board. He was literally right next to Khalil Ware the whole time. Why didn't somebody tell me? So 2% at 6,900. That's the same option as far as relative position to the field, having a ceiling. I would say that Collins has a more significant, more substantial, more reliable ceiling with a more likely probability to get there because he's projected at 31 minutes, right? We know we've got 30 plus minutes from John Collins. So yeah, the fact that the public's not going, they'll be there more than they're on Ware, but that's probably 6-8%. So yeah, at worst you consider him a rotational piece with these guys with some significant ceiling on. I don't hate that. Joval is another guy that could just provide a twist on a short slate. At 4,500, 4,300, I don't have him projected to play any significant time, just the backup center run. But he is a 1.30 per minute player. That's important to keep in mind when he's this cheap on this short a slate. He got into 2.6% of our top 150 lineups. That means some of those lineups did win some tournaments. So that's a functional piece of value on a slate where there is really not a lot of value functionality. It's not nearly as good as the Makovich one is at 4,600. But if you're moving off of this for reasons that would escape me, but if you're doing it, bear in mind that you do have Joval there. Again, you're just gambling on him putting up big time numbers and needing to play around like 2.0 over his 16 minutes, but he is capable of doing that. So even that's not off the board at this really short center position today. I don't think Chet works that way because of his price. 7,300, I don't think you're getting there in 26 minutes. Hartenstein, I also have on a little bit of a minutes handicap because of the impact that Chet's going to have there. Filipowski, I thought was going to be a big value starting the day. I had him projected for a bunch of minutes, but then it turned out all those guys are playing, so that went away. If you see those guys fall off the board, Filipowski could come roaring back for value. Steven Adams was off the board to start the day. Now he's here for 12 minutes. Nobody down here is giving you any kind of value. Even in a mixer sense, like Steven Adams is 4,500 or Quentin Post's 4,400 for 12 or 14 minutes. They don't really function the same way as Joval's 16 minutes do, even though those are low-end minutes projections. It's just a product of the super high quality that Joval's going to give you for whatever minutes he gets. Doug Gilly says, Trey Murphy over 18.5 real-life points? Yeah. Max Christie over 29.5 fantasy points. I think we got him in that range, right? I had him at a 26-point projection. What do you need for Christie? 29.5 is big. That's a really good number by them. Really good number. You need this to go up, is really what it is. You need him to play more than the 34, which is entirely likely. You're definitely home if any of those three guys that are questionable don't play. So I think that's why I would go to it, and I think I would go over. Because I am not really that skeptical that he gets to that mark if that's the situation. He was there, 29 last night and 39 too. So technically he didn't get there last night, which is, this is closing in on his ceiling for minutes and ceiling for production. But that's a really good number by them, again. Trey, I think you're more than fine. Trey's averaging 22.5 real-life points. So, yeah, absolutely. Slam that one. That is a good number by them, though, on that Doug Christie one. It really is. Yeah, Dimitri nails it as far as the Ware thing. Ware just you could condense that 5-minute soliloquy that I did down to this message. Ware just has a wide range of outcomes, but I think it's a good GPP spot that could get played off the floor since the Mavs are a smaller team but could benefit from that as well. Wide range of outcomes equals good GPP spot in a lot of cases. Jovic is what's up, says Trav. How do you feel about a Miami-Dallas game stack? Among the guys that are coming up, sure. And several of those guys are coming up, sure. But, I don't know that you want to artificially get carried away with that just because of that's by far the lowest end game. Apparently I closed this at some point. Again, our totals tonight are 235 between the Kings and the Pellies, 224.5 between the Dubs and the Rockets, and at least that one's the closest, or the second tied for the closest point spread at 1.5. This one is also a 1.5 point spread, but it's down 8 points from that one. It's at 216.5. That's our lowest end game. Then OKC Mini is a 9 point spread at 225.5, and the Clips and the Jazz 9.5 point spread at 228. So that's offset by 8 points from the next lowest game. Something to be concerned about there. You don't want to stack too much weight in, eventually it just, I can't make that analogy. Eventually you're just cramming guys in at the top of the dome that's created over this game for scoring. They're just pressed up, suffocating up against the glass at the top of the dome, and there's no room for them because there's only so much scoring to go around. So, yes to having several players from that game, as long as they're the guys who are coming up via the natural flow of the numbers here. But to say then, I want 2 more guys from that game to, stack it, I think would be a no. And just in general, stacking is not really a thing. We consider it much more individually for basketball. We'll get back to talking stacks with baseball big time. That's how baseball works. But there's not that need for chasing strong team-based correlation for basketball really at all. So that's why we don't really talk game stacks. But I get where your question comes from, because Miami Dallas, going down the board here. There's a lot of them. On DraftKings, that game is accounting for 213% exposure across all positions. On FanDuel, that game is accounting for 237% exposure across all 3 positions. So 2.5 players per lineup, essentially, if you think about it through that lens. And I think that kind of jibes with what I'm saying. You want to get to the Kyries, the Kessler Edwards, if he's playing, obviously, Kyrie, the OMPs on FanDuel of the world. Bit more of a spread on DraftKings where you can kind of broaden who you're getting to and mix and match these guys more. And maybe you can justify 3 per lineup on the DK slate coming out of both sides of this one. But that's kind of how I would look at it. Everything changes if some of those guys from Dallas don't play. Some of the pieces from Dallas become more and more critically valuable to this slate. And then you start being able to build toward your SGAs, and the slate, the overall shape of the slate kind of changes. Did that for each game real quick, I guess. Something to talk about. I do have all the guys yet. Only 126% exposure coming out of Golden State and Houston on FanDuel. On DraftKings, 142. 194% FanDuel from the Clippers-Utah game, 182% on the DraftKings slate. Miami-Dallas is going to end up coming up our most highly owned. I'm telling you right now. Only 53% exposure to Minnesota and OKC on FanDuel. That's astounding. On a 5-game slate, we are not getting this game like at all. 41% on DraftKings. If you're looking for outliers, two teams with excellent players, that's a really interesting outcome. And we're not like dramatically offset from the field on any of these. Public is just not going to be on OKC mini. That makes me a little bit more interested in some SGAs. Jalen Williams, we didn't even talk about. 5% on DraftKings for only $7,800. 8,400 on FanDuel is a little bit different at 2%, but that's level with the field. Absolutely, Jalen Williams is in that bucket of just low owned by the public. Very, very good players. 124, 123 per minute. It's among our better producers on the entire slate. SGA is obviously there. Everybody else from the OKC side is just those typical OKC, 0.7s, 0.8 type guys. Any one of them was fine. And then from Minnesota, especially when Conley doesn't end up playing, you're definitely going to get some values emerging here. So like we'll get to more Nah in that situation. We'll probably get a little bit more Ant, and I do think that Ant qualifies for that as well. But the most interesting ones are probably Jalen on DraftKings and Nas on DraftKings. Nas is a little bit more highly owned by the public, but I would take Jalen. And remember that bucket of guards that we were talking about that were all in the 7,000s and owned kind of like what Jalen is here? Put him in that bucket too. That is at worst a good rotational piece at low public value. Here's more ownership. 288.6. I think that beats out the other number coming out of Sacramento, New Orleans on FanDuel, and a lot of it on DraftKings too. 221.3. I think the Miami game was more. But this is your next or your most highly owned game. And probably the most valuable game overall. It's an interesting way to look at things. We should do more of that. Yeah, OKC Wiggins. I get it. The Davion Mitchell was the Heat player you were referring to. I thought there was a mix-up between Andrew Wiggins and OKC Wiggins. Yeah, he was on that board just a second ago. My thing with those OKC guys is just always, those chasing those sub 1 per minute rates. The minutes are always, pretty solid. I'm not worried about that, but you're getting low-end rates. He caps out with the best rate and the highest usage among those players, but that only puts him at league average usage and slightly below. I think it was like 0.92 was that average we came up with before, right? So he tops out at average. And that's Lou Dort, that's Isaiah Joe, who burnt me yesterday. That's Kenrich Williams. It's all these guys. So any one of those guys is totally fine. In any given lineup. There's nothing wrong with that call out at all. And, good enough player for the money. I just like chasing those when there's a little bit more meat on the bone, like value-wise. But I'm a Thunder fan. OMG, 100%. If suddenly news broke right now that Chet was playing 30 today, he would be one of the most valuable pieces on the entire slate. He's only 76 on FanDuel. He's 73 on DraftKings. Let's see. Because I have him in here, not only at that minutes cut, but also with a bit of a rate cut from like what he really is. But even with that included, come on. Even with that included, maybe wouldn't be one of the best value. Yeah, I got a little bit out over my skis on that. He still wouldn't be. You would have to give him back full credit for being Chet, being this guy. which we're not doing yet. If we do that, then we're talking. Game environment. Right about there. Yeah, that now we're getting there. Because we'd be projecting it like this probably if we had that news. Because if I had that news, then I would give him back his production because I would assume that those went hand in hand. If the team's confident he's going to play, the team's confident he's going to produce in those minutes. So I'd give him back at least most of that or some of that. And he would get to a 5.35 value score, which is a lot more functional, especially the way this slate is short on big men. So I suspect we would have quite a bit of them at that point. And you could give them a ceiling on top of that too, with easy to justify. Let me undo all those changes now real quick. You don't want those coming through the model. Okay, I think that was it. Hang on. Yeah, I think that was it. Nope. Now, all right, now we're back. Michael Knack likes Gobert tonight. Again, any of the at least legit centers are going to be at worst functional on this slate, I think, because of just how thin that position is today. He's coming up a little bit, 10% on FanDuel, 4% on DraftKings for 66. There's legit ceiling there. If you get no Şengün going against him, so much. Sorry, that's the wrong. I jumped to this game. It's going up against OKC. Not the best matchup going up against OKC. I just don't like Rudy that much because he's just the ultimate collector of fantasy points. As I've said a bunch of times, he's underperforming his past rates. There is essentially no offense there. I'm always chasing the creators of fantasy points over the collectors is really what it comes down to with Rudy. But the production is good enough and the price is fine on this slate. It just also comes down to, would I like that or would I rather take the shot on like the $500 cheaper Khalil Ware type of a lotto ticket play? Because they're projected pretty similarly. And Ware's going to blast past him with offensive upside if he gets the opportunity. So, not off the board, just by virtue of being a center who can produce at above a fantasy point per minute. But not a priority, I wouldn't say. With that, guys, coming up on 6:18. If you haven't already, hit the like button. This is the last time I'll harangue you about that. Check out rotoscouts.com for all your projections needs. Multiple links to Discord in the chat. I know some people just jumped in. Just help build out the community even if you don't subscribe. But if you do choose to subscribe, weekly, monthly, quarterly plans available. It includes everything. This is not a per sport thing. Under $1 a day for access to all of it on any one of those plans. It only comes down to your decision about how much do you actually want to spend per day. A weekly is under $7 to get you from here to the to next Thursday. I appreciate you, OMG. Amin was coming up a lot. Amin was one of our more highly exposed players. He's right here. 43%, way above the field on DK. I love that position considering our relative to position to the field. I think there's a ton of upside. I also really like his guard and forward eligibility, the point guard, small forward eligibility. On FanDuel, same story. Above our value threshold on FanDuel, just short of it on DraftKings, but it doesn't really matter. He's just one of the higher end players overall on the slate. So, yeah, plenty of opportunity here, and the minutes are outrageous. He's got the highest minutes projection on the slate. And not all that likely to fall that short of it, honestly. He just plays. So, yeah, I like the upside. With that, guys, I'm going to punch out of here. I got to get those NHL projections done. I got to catch up on any updates that this needs, and then we'll be on top of things going through the evening. And then no shows tomorrow, no NHL, no NBA tomorrow at all. We're just off. Keep an eye on the site over the next few days. All the more reason to jump into the Discord because I might pop Daytona projections up there. And if I do, those are included too. There's no all of a sudden I have a NASCAR plan for you. It's just, hey, these are included. Whatever hits that site is included. So check it out. Jump in, join the community. But that'll be the next thing. All-Star game projections. I'll have whatever we get from these sites. I'll project for the NBA All-Star game. And then ongoing projections for the NHL Four Nations tournament are also going up on the site. So there is a little bit of value coming through, and then we'll add season-long baseball content coming this weekend. Thank you guys so much. You absolutely rock. Appreciate all the love in the chat today. Big show today. I guess this was a good time to land it relative to everybody else's shows. But appreciate all you guys. Good to see you. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. Share it when you do. I love seeing those screenshots. And we'll see you soon. Later.